Welcome to Conversations with Dr. Skip Mason,
pastor, preacher, historian, author,
teacher, librarian, archivist, world traveler,
collector, family historian, avid reader, and creator of the popular Vanishing Black Atlanta Facebook page.
But a lot of folks who love history.
Most importantly,
he's our
dad who loves his family and who taught us the importance of our history and having important conversations.
Join him now for this episode of Conversations with Dr. Skip.
Well, good Sunday afternoon, my brothers and sisters. I know it's a beautiful Sunday where you are. I hope you had a great day in the Lord and that you received a blessing from the word this morning. And some of you are watching football, I know. And many of us are getting ready for the Atlanta Braves to go ahead and take it on home and win the World Series tonight. And so we're claiming that victory. But I'm so glad that you stopped for a few moments in your afternoon to come and to share on another conversation with one of our distinguished church leaders. I'm excited to have Dr. Tyrone Davis here to share with us today in what I call providing for the shepherd. Everything you want to know about the CME Church's plan for insurance and pension and retirement for the pastor. Of course, Dr. Davis does that and much more, and we'll be bringing him up in just a moment. But this is a conversation for pastors and lay. And I think that as we march into Cincinnati for 2022, we need to continue to be well informed about those things which impact our church and those things which impact our pastors especially. I always like to begin with acknowledging our senior bishop, Lawrence L. Reddick and Mrs. Reddick and the College of Bishops, our CIT chair, Bishop James B. Walker, and the chair of the College of Bishops, and my bishop and co-chair, Bishop Thomas L. Brown, Sr., and their spouses, and Dr. Teresa Duhart, whom I'm always grateful for. We're going to invite you today also to ask questions. You may put questions in the chat. Dr. Duhart is going to assist me in trying to find and identify any questions that you may have regarding the work of the General Board of Personnel Services. But before we begin and before I bring Dr. Davis up, I do want to share a few announcements. Again, this is the last day of October, but I hope it is not the last day that we continue to bring awareness to domestic violence and to breast cancer. Always know that there is help for those persons who are in bad relationships, are experiencing violence. There's the 1-800 number that will be here on the screen. And I know throughout our Zion that our pastors and lay have been sharing information about that, but it is important that we continue to bring attention to this as well. The Pastors Conference is coming up in January of 2022, the virtual, and we'll be sharing more information about that. Of course, the Women's Missionary Council Executive Board is coming up. A lot of this information you can find on the wonderful CME Church website, but it is important that I do share that with you. On this coming Tuesday, another episode of See, Me, Grow, Dialogues on Developing Vibrant Congregations. And on this coming Tuesday, Church Planting, you have some phenomenal guests, Reverend Edward Neal, Reverend Darrell Burton, and Reverend Tyrone Jones. I tuned in last week to hear my good friend and buddy, Reverend Gregory Williams, give an excellent presentation on church growth, and he did a marvelous job. I want to also highlight the upcoming episodes for November, just to kind of whet your appetite. On next Sunday, November the 7th, we have Episcopal Aspirants, our church past, present, and future. Reverend Frederick Braddock, Reverend Dr. Earl Griffin, Dr. Charley Haynes Jr., Dr. Clarence Kelby Heath, Dr. Ricky Helton will be my special guest on next Sunday as we talk about our church past, present, and future. Also, coming up on the following week, November the 14th. We will continue that conversation with the remaining Episcopal aspirants, Dr. Manuel Henderson, Reverend Billy Holloway, Reverend Peris J. Lester, Dr. Phillip Washington, and Dr. Wayne Williams. As you know, a few weeks ago, I had the opportunity to share with the sisters who are Episcopal aspirants as well. Also, on November the 21st, we will have a conversation with the lay speaks. They have something to say. And I'm looking forward to this conversation with a special guest, Brother Freddie McKnight, who's the Connectional Steward President, Sister G. Bernice Richardson, Dr. Nellie B. King, Brother Earl Bryant, Brother Willie Robinson, and Barbara C. Campbell, our Connectional Lay Ministry. And I'm delighted to spend this conversation with them. And then on November the 28th, we will have a conversation on the ministry to men and the work that they've been doing. Brother Leo Pinkett has been the only general secretary for this department. He'll be retiring, but we want to look at the work that they're doing and the work that they continue to do. And so there'll be a select group of ministry to men leaders across the connection. And I'm excited and looking forward to this conversation, and also looking at the work that they hope to do. I know that there are people who are running for office, brothers and sisters throughout the Zion, and I promise you, you will hear from every one of those candidates. I will bring them here. We'll talk about what they hope to do for the respective office that they are running for. But today, it is my pleasure to bring a friend and brother and the General Secretary of Personnel Service, who is no stranger to our church at all, Dr. Tyrone Davis. I had Dr. Davis on the show last year with the general officer, so you already know a lot about him. You know that he is an ordained preacher, but he is also the General Secretary of Personnel Services. And so we are delighted to have him here. Dr. Davis, welcome. Glad to see you.
Glad to be here.
We were supposed to have him on a few weeks ago, but he claimed he had to go take a vacation somewhere. And so we said, okay, go and vacate and get restored and refreshed. So we're glad that he's able to come and to be with us today. Your discipline, for those of you like the senior bishop who always carries his discipline everywhere with him, chapter 48, 1034, page 213 in your discipline outlines the organization known as the General Board of Personnel Services, the objectives and the authority and the work that they do, that the organization does. And you'll see running at the bottom of the screen an explanation taken from the webpage. But Dr. Davis, in a nutshell, tell us exactly what it is that you do, and then we're going to get into some of the nuts and bolts of the work that you're doing as it relates to pastors particularly. And I know you also handle lay that are employed by the church, but specifically as it relates to pastors. Tell us a little bit about what you do in this position as a general secretary.
Well, the magic word you said is, what do I do? And in this position, so that's going to go a little bit beyond even what's done in the department. But let me share that, as you have asked, in a nutshell. The primary responsibility that I have is for the administration of the CME Retirement Plan and Trust. That was what the department was originally organized for. In addition to that, though, we do administer the CME Supplemental 403B plan. And that is tied to our retirement plan. So there are limitations for those who are eligible to participate in it. We also have the CME Fire and Casualty Insurance Plan that we administer for the denomination. What a lot of people are not as well aware of is that we administer the denomination's directors and officers liability insurance plan and during my tenure in office, we're now administering a workers' compensation insurance plan that addresses both the connectional level as it continues with the local churches. We administer the key person insurance plan. And of course, many people are familiar with the gift fund plan. We administer that as well. There are other areas that we are responsible for that we don't have active programs with or active programs developed, as you've articulated in the discipline, ministerial care, economic development, insurances, particularly group health insurance, fiscal affairs. It's inclusive of investment income and endowment programs. Now, those are the general things that I'm responsible for denominationally for my department. But there's some other responsibilities that I have for the denomination that I believe I have mainly because I am in this role. And some of them are referenced in the discipline. I serve as the registered agent for the church. So that means anytime that any legal documents are served on the church, they would come to me, and it's my responsibility to make sure that they get to the right people. I serve as the custodian of the denomination's original legal documents, and we're required to keep those in a safe place. I'm also a director and officer of the CME CDC. I'm a licensed insurance agent in both property and casualty and life and health insurance. I'm a contributing writer or editor for the associate editor with the Christian Index. I've been writing articles for the Index since April of 2011 and have never missed a month. And also, on behalf of our department, we serve as the lessor for the Zion Christian Cemetery, which the CME Church owns, and we lease it to a group that's called the Zion Community Project. And I serve as a member of that board, and actually I have been serving as chair of that board. Now, there are other areas to just sum this up right quick. I also serve on some academic boards within the church. The Phillip School of Theology, I'm a member of that board. Also serve on our affiliated college boards, Texas College, Miles College, and Miles Foundation, Payne College, and I was formerly on Lane College's board until my term expired. So that's just a little bit of what I do.
Well, my goodness, that's quite a bit. That's a lot. And are you a full-time active pastor as well?
No, I'm not. I am actually the only clergy general officer who does not pastor.
Who does not pastor?
As Bishop Graves and Bishop Gilmore orientated me as I came into this position, this was full-time work.
Okay.
During my training period, I was in training from 2000 to 2002, the election, and I did pastor 2 years here in Memphis, but I have not pastored since I have assumed this role. And in fact, my predecessor did not pastor either. He did serve for supply for a short time when there was a vacancy at the Greenwood CME Church, but that was not even for a year out of his 24 years of service.
So what I want to do is to sort of get to the nuts and bolts as it relates to the pastor, particularly, and the functions of your office, and what you provide for the pastor, what comes out of your office, and how does a pastor become enrolled in the retirement plan? How are they informed about insurance? I realize most pastors already know and already enrolled, and they receive the annual statement. But for somebody who does not know how this happens and what you offer, what does the church offer to a pastor by way of pension and retirement?
Okay, where do we start? I can tell you how it was, and I can tell you how it is now.
Okay.
It was a mystery. Most people, let me start with the retirement plan. That is the primary benefit from our department. Most people didn't know about it. And they did not know about the plan and what it involved until they got into the plan, which was kind of circular, if you will. When a person enrolls in the plan, they receive a summary plan document that explains the plan. Well, I thought that was backwards. So what we've done is we have scanned a copy of the summary document and we have put it on our website so that persons can read about the plan and how it operates before they actually enroll in it. To enroll in the plan, there is an application form that must be completed, where an individual will indicate where they're serving, and primarily from a pastoral perspective, they will identify the church, their role, their contact information, date of birth, social security, all of that. But also included in that application is the designation of beneficiaries. And they would name a beneficiary for the accumulation of their retirement funds. And they would name a beneficiary for the life insurance that would be carried on the participant. When we receive these forms, they are then processed and they are enrolled. The participant becomes enrolled in the plan on the 1st of January or the 1st of July, if all of the information is correct, and that we have received a contribution for them. The minimum contribution for anyone to enroll is $180, which is equivalent to a minimum salary of $1,500 a year.
Okay.
And if a person, if we receive a contribution for someone for just $100, but we got a completed application, then we've got to wait until another payment comes in to equal at least a total of $180.
So does your office, let me ask you, Dr. Davis, does your office communicate to the pastor then of that church that sent $100 in that you do not have enough to enroll at this time?
Yes.
Okay.
A letter based on the information that we have received. If we have their enrollment form, then we have their contact information, assuming they have not moved. Or if we've gotten the information from the Episcopal district through their annual conference report forms that they submit to our department, if they have an address there, then we use that address. And we will send a letter to them telling them that we have received X number of dollars and that we either need additional funds, or we will tell them that we have enough funds, but we don't have a completed application. Sometimes the money comes in before the application comes in because people don't know that they're eligible to enroll. Yes.
I began pastoring in 1996.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, I was not aware. I didn't enroll until 2001, 5 years later. So that's part of what we want to do. I would perhaps say that communication has gotten better, okay? That pastors are made aware of these opportunities. Am I safe in saying that? And whose responsibility? Is it the presiding elder? Is it the bishop? To make sure that pastors who are eligible are knowledgeable, that they are able to enroll in the church's retirement plan?
All of the above.
Okay.
They're all responsible to help communicate this. However, people get on the bus at a different time and stage from different experiences and from different information that's been shared with them.
Okay.
For years, certain segments of the church said that you could not enroll in the retirement plan unless you were in full connection. And that was not true.
Mm.
If you are employed by the church, you are eligible to enroll in the plan. And that's exemplified by the fact that we have lay persons in the plan who cannot be in full connection. So that was a misnomer. That was a misunderstanding. But many people missed the enrollment period because they were under the wrong impression, that they had to wait until they were in full connection. You're correct. We've tried to fill in this vacuum with accurate information, more current information. And we are in the process of writing an outline for a document that we hope can be printed and shared, offered to the College of Bishops, that can be used through the committees on ministry, that can allow the persons who are on trial coming through the process to have that access and understand some of these steps, and everyone hear it all the same way, if that makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense. And I know that you have been consistent, and I read your articles, and I've gone back and looked at them, and you've done a great job in terms of communicating various issues. But sometimes that information just does not trickle down to the pastor who's been assigned his first church. Okay. And so I for me, that's 5 years of time that I can't get back for whatever reason. And mind you, my first church was only a one Sunday church, and I think I was making $200 a Sunday. So it didn't leave me much to invest with then, but I was there for 3 years before I went to Atlanta to Greater Hopewell. And I pastored at Greater Hopewell for 9 years. And it was during my pastoring at Greater Hopewell that I, learned about this plan. So you're eligible to enroll. And the reason I knew it was 2001, Dr. Davis, because you all do indicate that on the gold sheet of paper. I don't know why it's gold that you send out. At any rate,
it's a good color.
Data membership by default. But
that's a good color.
It's just important to know, and we want to help somebody watching. If one pastor said, "I didn't know we had a retirement plan," then we've helped somebody, to seek that information out with regards to the retirement plan. Would you talk about it?
But let me also add one other point about that. And it is in the discipline and often overlooked, but contributions that are received by our department, we hold those funds in trust. Okay. Even for people who have not enrolled, we call those pre-enrollees. Okay. And we hold them in trust for those pre-enrollees for 3 years. Okay. After the 3 years have elapsed, then it goes into the general fund of the overall plan. So whenever a person has not enrolled in year one, for example, if they enrolled in year 5, then their enrollment would pick up their year 5 contribution plus their year 4 and year 3 contribution. Okay. And they would only forfeit years 1 and 2. So we work diligently to try to eliminate the number of people, or reduce, but hopefully eliminate the number of people who are in the pre-enrolled category, so that they are not losing funds that have been contributed for them simply because they have not been enrolled. Okay.
So, Dr. Davis, who manages the funds? I'm assuming you do, but I just want to ask, is that a part of your responsibility to manage the retirement funds for the church?
Well, in principle, yes, the buck stops with me. Okay. Although I must, to be fair, ultimate responsibility is with our board of trustees.
Okay.
We have a board that is led by a bishop who, in our case, happens to be our senior bishop.
Right.
In fact, during my tenure, I've had 3 board chairs, and they were all at one point senior bishop. Bishop Marshall Gilmore, Bishop Paul A.G. Stewart, and now Senior Bishop Lawrence Reddy.
Okay.
But we have a bishop who is the chair of our board, the general secretary, and then there's one representative from each Episcopal district.
Okay.
And they are appointed at the general conference. They're appointed at the general connectional board following the general conference.
Okay.
So unlike some boards that may have 2 people from a district or 1 or 2 from an annual conference as a larger committee, we're very small in number, but it's an exceptional body. In fact, 2 are attorneys and they're female. We have 4 presiding elders, 2 pastors, and 3 additional lay persons. So we've got an even balance of clergy and lay. We've got a good number of male, female. We've got a good deal of history and learned experiences, particularly in our vice chair, presiding elder Lindsay Napier.
Okay.
So it's an excellent board, but that's the group that is ultimately responsible, and it is responsible to the General Connectional Board and to the General Conference.
And not only do you manage the retirement for pastors, but for bishops, general officers, and other persons. Talk about who else, what other groups are a part of the management of what you and the board oversee.
Well, we have lay employees departments. We've had lay employees from our seminary, and one of our college presidents has remained an active participant in the plan.
Okay.
But pastors, presiding elders, all of these persons that I've named, these categories, general officers, they all are part of it. How active they are. Of course, the contributions for the bishops and general officers is a part of the connectional budget, so that's automatically included. The rest come as contributions from the churches. The churches are mandated to pay 12% for the pastors, but they're not mandated to pay 12% for their lay employees.
Mm-hmm.
That part is voluntary for those churches that participate.
So, Dr. Davis, maybe you're the one to answer this. What happens in some instance? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. What happens, and it has happened when churches say we're not paying the 12%. And it has happened before. What's the recourse?
Well, now you let me back into that answer.
Okay.
I have survived as general secretary for these 19 and a half years, mainly by staying in my lane.
Okay.
So our official response is that we account for the monies that we receive and the enrollment documents that are submitted and the processing of the same.
Okay.
Anything else beyond that occurs at another level of the church. And we've learned by experience that it is not wise for us to get involved in what happens at the conference level or the local church level. The only involvement we may have is if a person says that they have made a payment to their elder or at a conference, and it didn't show up on their participant statement, we'll check our records and see if we have it, if there was an error. And if there's no error, then we then refer them back to their annual conference to pursue the matter.
Okay, all right. Would you say a little bit about the insurance that you provide to pastors? You have various levels, premiums, self, spouse, accidental, disability. Talk about the insurance package that you have for pastors and other persons who are a part of your program.
All right. A participant whose church pays a contribution for them of the full 12%, that person is insured for their full salary because their 12% is calculated on their salary. So if their salary is $28,000 and they send 12% of that to us, then that person is insured for $28,000. Their spouse is also insured for half of that amount. In this case, it would be $14,000. And then the additional benefit that they would have, the participant has, is short-term disability. And that disability insurance is up to a maximum of $250 per week for a 13-week period. So if a pastor is disabled and they make application, then that is processed and they receive that disability payment for up to a 13-week period once they've met the qualifying time.
Okay, all right. And we assume that most pastors are aware that you offer disability and that there's a process. And let me ask it another way. Has it been used often during your
Quite a bit.
Quite a bit?
Quite a bit.
Okay.
Quite a bit.
Okay.
In fact, I remember one person who questioned several years, even at the connectional board meeting, about that. They didn't see why we had to have insurance as a part of the package. They said they had enough insurance. They didn't need the insurance. And of course, it's not a plan, it's a group plan. So you can't just pick and choose. Everyone has the access to the same, and the costs are reduced because of the number of participants involved. 2 years later, that same person had a medical situation. The first thing happened, he called, wanted to know about a disability benefit, and received that benefit. So these benefits we talk about, we don't need the insurance, and it may be that you don't need it today. The problem is if you need it tomorrow and you don't have it, you're not going to get it. But if you have it, it comes through for you. And this has been one of the features that has made our plan one of the most enviable plans around. It's an older plan, set up at a time when you didn't find these plans in our sister churches, but it has stood the test of time. And others keep saying they would like to do it, but they can't get it set up now. Our plan is still grandfathered in place, and that's the joy and the good thing for us.
So if a pastor dies and the family is unaware that the church offered and had an insurance policy for him, how are you all able, how do you find out, and does the family have to submit death certificate, an application, or if the presiding elder or the bishop says we had a pastor to die, do you all put the wheels in motion to provide the benefit to the family?
Yes. Let me back up a little bit on the insurance piece, though, because this year is a different year for us with insurance. And when I was explaining that the pastor would have like $28,000, spouse would have $14,000, that's the way it has been for years. Okay. So we're with the company now that has been insuring a lot of churches, And what they did for us was to set up spousal benefit for the period that we will be with them, where every spouse is insured for $50,000, regardless of the amount of insurance on the participant.
So that's the plan we have now.
That's the plan we have now. This is the company that we're with, and that was what they designed. So if a bishop, for example, is insured for $75,000, the bishop's spouse would be insured for $37.50 normally, but they're included too, flat rate $50,000. The person is insured for $10,000, spouse is insured for $50,000, and that, and we have had several claims already on that, and it has gone a long ways to help people. Now back to your question. When a participant dies, someone has to let us know. And that's why I've been writing articles about talking to your spouses and making plans for the inevitable, because it would be good if it comes from the family, which we're often made aware by either the presiding bishop or the presiding elder. But once we get the notice, we will then send a letter of sharing our awareness to the beneficiary on record. And that starts a whole new operation. But we will send them a letter. And I haven't had a chance to talk about our contract administrators, but our contract administrators handle all of our insurance activities, both life insurance, disability, and etc. So we send a letter of acknowledgement, and we notify the contract administrators to send to the beneficiary the appropriate claim forms. And those claim forms would have to be completed, and then and they would have to be returned to us with the death certificate. Now, I emphasize to us because this is a group plan. We understand it well. We know what some of the issues are, and we're there to help the family. But if the family, by mistake, sends those insurance papers directly to the company, then we are no longer able to help them, because that company will not take any calls from us. They will only deal with the family, because that's from whom they received those documents. They received them from us, then we're still a legitimate intermediary, and we can then help resolve some of the issues, like maybe an error on the claim form or whatever.
So notify your office, not the company directly.
Notify us.
Yeah.
We notify the company for you.
Right.
And that needs to be done on a timely basis.
Okay.
We have had some people who beneficiaries didn't know they were a beneficiary, didn't know they had insurance.
Right.
A year or two later, they've come back and wanted to make a claim. We give them the paperwork. They send it to us. We send it to the company. The problem may be we've changed companies since that person died.
Okay.
And then it's at the pleasure of the company as to whether they're going to honor the claim. Right. But there's another thing in here that's also a tremendous benefit that you don't find in most insurance documents and policies. Because of the way our plan is designed.
Yes.
If a participant dies or insured spouse dies, the person who's processing this does not have to go out and borrow money to go to the funeral home.
Okay.
Working with us, we will share with them what their limits are. Okay. They don't have to share it with the funeral home. but they can negotiate with the funeral home, whatever arrangements they need. And then when it comes time to pay the bill, they can then have the company call our office, and we will arrange an assignment up to the maximum amount of the coverage that they have. And so they don't have to pay a penny out of their pocket. That assignment when it is processed, we send that with the claim form to the insurance company, and they deduct that amount from the total to be paid out. So the family didn't have to do it on the front end.
Wow, that's good information.
And I was amazed as we had to deal with one of our key persons' death. When I talked with the company about this, I just presumed they would do the same thing with a key person policy. They said, no, we cannot do that. So this is a benefit that we have through our plan, the way it is designed.
Okay. I've got a couple of questions I want to share.
Sure.
From some of our wonderful viewers. So please clarify, is it correct that the pastor that pays into the plan automatically qualifies for life insurance based on the pastor's salary? This would be in addition, this would be an added to the additional Keyman life insurance churches that they purchase now. Does that make sense to you? I may not have read it correctly, but
I'm assuming they're talking about the retirement plan insurance in the retirement plan.
Right. So
not key person insurance, but in the retirement plan, it is based on, in principle, on their salary.
Okay.
But we don't know what the salary is. So all we know is the amount of money we receive. We process any contribution received as if it's 12% of their salary. So if we get 12% of a $40,000 a year salary, then they're insured for 12% of that. I mean, they're insured for $40,000. The next year, if they only send half that amount, the insurance drops to $20,000.
So the life insurance drops based on so does it change each year?
It changes based on the amount of the 12% received.
But the spouse's insurance remains the same.
With the company we're with now, it remains the same.
I see.
Only the participants' level of insurance is determined by the contribution received.
I got you. So we have a question: are enrollment forms located on the website?
I want to say yes.
Okay.
I want to say yes. And I'm saying that because I think we have a static copy. We have been trying to post a electronic version that will allow for electronic signatures. Because we must have an authorized signature. So, and we've been working with that. We've had some difficulties with it. So we've not really engaged the electronic version, but the static copy is on the website. And my hesitancy is that we have two websites. We have one through the CME webmaster, and then we also have a separate website that we are developing for all of the general board documents. And I don't think we have it on the CME on the general board site yet.
Okay. All right. But hopefully we will get there. You know, now with documents dealing with real estate and closing, everything is electronic, you know,
absolutely.
Your signature. So I hope that we're moving in that direction. Let me ask you a
question.
And
we're anxious to get there, but we must make certain that we maintain security.
Sure.
Securities.
Absolutely.
So that's why we're not promoting it until these glitches have been taken care of.
Now, is the retirement money paid into the retirement, is that money matched by the church?
No.
No. Okay.
No. In fact, the money that is paid into the retirement plan is from our perspective received from the church. It's a church. It's in what we consider an employer contribution.
Okay. Okay, but there are no matching funds per se.
There are no matching funds. There once was years ago. I've got a little bit of that history, but we may not have time to get into that. But you and I can talk one day about that.
Yeah.
Back in the history of the program. But there is no matching of the retirement contribution that the church makes by the pastor.
So I do want to talk about, or at least ask you and have you respond, because you heard it before, from people who don't work but who have some knowledge of investments and whether or not we're getting the best interest rate for our investment money. So think about that. Somebody asked Dr. Davis, could you say more about the 403B plan?
Okay. Well, I'm glad they asked that, because that's what I was going to follow up with on your previous statement. Although there is no match to the retirement plan's contribution that the church makes within the plan itself, we have had a 403B plan that the pastors can contribute to if they are an active member of the retirement plan. And that would come directly from them. It is salary reduced. It can be both it can be either tax deferred or it can be a Roth investment. Okay. They would, and when they would invest in that, they will direct how those funds would be invested. They can make it as risky as they like or as fixed and secure as they like, depending on their particular circumstances. But they have to have a W-2. They have to be at the W-2 register, because that's how 403 funds are tracked. And they have to have electronic access so that they can direct it. And their employer, the church or whomever is receiving the funds and taking it out of their salary, needs to be able to electronically transmit those funds to us. So when we make the payment for them, we take no risk that a check would bounce.
Right. I have another question for you, Dr. Davis.
Sure.
What happens? Let me put it up. What happens to retirement funds when a pastor dies?
Excellent question. And this question ties back into the insurance question.
Okay.
When a pastor dies or an insured participant, let's use that terminology, an insured participant dies, the insurance can be paid, it is generally paid within 30 days after the claim has been filed.
Okay.
If everything is in order, it gets paid within that 30-day period. Retirement funds are paid at designated times of the year. When I became General Secretary, those times were March, July, and December. Okay. And so when a minister dies, a pastor or insured participant dies, there is a claim form that has to be completed that we send to the beneficiary. And the beneficiary for one item, the insurance, may not be the same beneficiary for the retirement. That's up to the insured to determine, or the participant to determine. But when they complete those forms, send them back to us, then they are put in line for the next distribution period. Okay. So if a person dies in January, forms get back to us in February. we put them in line for March.
I got you. Very good.
I did want to say a question. I mean, a quick statement about the retire. When we talked about when retirement funds are paid out in the event of death, but I would like to also talk about when retirement funds are paid out when people retire. Please. Because I gave you the dates that we were making payments when I became general secretary. And that was, like I said, March, July, and December. Well, one of the things we discovered is that a lot of people, everyone retired at annual conference, but some of the annual conferences would occur before July, some would occur after July. And those persons whose retirement occurred before July at their conference, they were able to get their retirement payments by the end of July. Those whose retirement occurred in August, early September, they had to wait until December. That can be difficult when you're retiring, you're no longer, and you're not continuing in supply capacity, you have no other income.
Right.
So what we elected to do was to move the July date to September. And so, because all of our conferences are during the summer. And so whenever anyone retires during the summer, if they get their payment, if they get their papers into us in time, and they don't have to wait until retirement to start the process, but if their completed papers are received by us in time with a verification from their bishop, they're put in line for a end of September disbursement. And that keeps them from having to wait until the end of December.
And is that the full amount that they had up to that time? And is the retiree responsible for paying taxes on that money?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
But the full payment does not have to go to the retiree.
Okay.
The retiree is responsible for the taxes. The payment can go to the retiree in full, or they can roll it over into a qualified account, or they can take some of it for themselves and roll the balance. But any portion that the retiree receives, they have to pay taxes on that portion. If they roll it over, they don't have to pay taxes on the part that has been rolled over because it's still being held by a qualifying agent.
Right.
But once they start to pull it down from that agent, then they will have to pay taxes, and that agent would be helping them with their 1099s.
Dr. Davis, do you all allow requests for early withdrawal of retirement funds?
Would you explain early withdrawal?
Meaning that a pastor or lay may have an extenuating circumstance, medical emergency, or something where they need funds, and some plans.
Well, no, I'm sorry. You're answering one part of the question. I was really asking about another part of it.
Okay.
Most people are of the opinion that you can't retire until you're 74.
Okay.
But the discipline allows for pastors and clergy participants in the plan to retire, to have the right to retire at the conference when they are 65, provided they have had at least 10 years in the itinerancy.
Okay.
So 74 is not the age of retirement, it's the age of mandatory retirement.
Right.
So I was asking for clarification because some people consider prior to 74 as early retirement.
Right.
But if the question you're asking based on those circumstances occurs prior to age 65, the general answer is no.
No. Okay.
You're not able to withdraw funds. Some people have wanted to borrow funds, but we once had a loan program well before I was moved into this position. But because of the way we are structured, the loan program did not work. The people did not pay back the loans.
Okay.
And the delinquencies were so significant that it became an amount that could jeopardize the qualification of the retirement plan for setting aside monies for retirement.
Right.
So we don't have that loan fund anymore. And so for emergency situations, the only exception to the rule is for a person who seeks to retire for medical purposes, and it is a permanent disability that prohibits their ability to function in their role in the church.
Okay.
That can be the only exception, and that must be validated by a doctor's certificate and evaluated through our process.
I see. Any penalties on that, if that's the case?
Any
penalties for early withdrawal of the retirement fund due to extenuating medical circumstances?
There's no penalty from us if they meet the criteria.
Right.
But they will have to deal with the tax implications.
Okay.
If you receive retirement funds prior to age 59 and a half, you have to pay a 10% penalty.
Okay.
For early withdrawal.
Okay.
And that's in addition to the tax you have to pay on having received the monies.
Sure.
Because it was not paid by the individual, it was contributed by the church, and therefore had not been taxed previously.
I got you. So Dr. Duhard has confirmed that the application for participation in the CME retirement plan is on the website.
It is.
The website, and as well as all of your monthly articles. They are there as well.
Yeah.
So I encourage you all to go to our wonderful website. It's so chock full of material and information. Even all of my past shows are on the website. So if you just get absolutely bored, stiff, go to the website and you can look at shows going back to the first one. I have another question for you that has come in from a pastor. In the case of a parent passing away and they cannot find any documentation on insurance, this is assuming that the parent may have been a spouse of a pastor. How will the family connect with the church to get information?
I'm going to try not to make that complicated. I'm assuming that a parent of an adult or adult child or something, is that the case?
Yeah.
Anyone who believes or suspects that their parent is insured by our plan or is a part of our plan should contact us.
Okay.
And we will check the records.
Do some research and check.
Right.
Okay.
Now, let me mention one other plan that we haven't had a chance to talk about as we talk about insurance.
Yeah.
The insurance that we've been talking about so far has been insurance in the retirement plan.
Right.
And what happened when I became general secretary and the way the plan was structured at that time was this insurance was carried on the individual or the individual and their spouse until they retired, because the premiums for that insurance was being paid out of their contributions. But when they retired and they pulled out all of their funds, there was no more money then to keep up the insurance. So what became a challenge was the recognition that some people who retired had been sick, had served the church many years. They might have been sick. They might have had a small retirement account. When they got their monies, they probably used it to pay medical bills and et cetera. And then when they passed, people had to pass the hat.
I got you.
So we felt initially that there ought to be something that the church could do to let a minister die with some dignity.
Right.
So we set up, and this was initially a free option. We set up where if a person, when they retired, had at least $10,000 worth of life insurance, then we would provide a small life insurance plan for them. If they had less than 10,000, if they had 7,000, then we would set up 7,000 for them.
Okay.
And we did that for about 3 years. Unfortunately, changed companies, and the next company started billing. So now our department, Personnel Services, takes from its resources the funds to maintain that. But we now have what's called a retiree insurance plan, and it pays for the premium for insurance for retired pastors who have retired at 72 or later. We provide that insurance for them up to $10,000. And we were providing up to 50% for their spouses. But the same company that provided the base plan for the larger program also provides the insurance for this one.
Okay.
They provide a flat amount of $6,500 for the spouses. So the pastor, the retiree may have $10,000 worth of insurance. The spouse will have $6,500. The participant, the retiree, may only have $4,000 worth of insurance. The spouse still has $6,500 worth of insurance. Now, bear in mind this is very important. All of this is all set up based on the participant.
Okay.
So if the participant dies, there is no more insurance for the spouses. This is all term insurance.
Right.
And is triggered by the life expectancy of the participant.
I got you. So if the pastor dies, then that's it for coverage for the surviving widow.
That's correct.
Okay.
If the spouse dies, the pastor is still insured.
Still
If
insured.
the pastor remarries,
okay.
the new spouse is insured.
Okay. Okay.
But when the participant, the enrollee, dies, then it terminates the plan for them.
And spouse means currently married, not ex-spouse.
Not ex-spouse.
Somebody
not
that,
ex-spouse.
okay.
And I'm glad you said that, because another change we made was on the participant form, where we were listing all of the information that you were looking at on that gold sheet. We did not list the name of the spouse before. We now list that name because sometimes we're not told that there's a new spouse.
Okay.
Or that there is a spouse. They may have married after they enrolled in the plan. So we send that document so it can be reviewed. And if you see that spouse is blank and you have a spouse, then there's some follow-up that needs to be done.
Right, right. So it really is, to sum up everything that you shared, is really just knowing what you have, and communicating that information to those that may be left to plan for you, that they understand what you have, what you've invested. And this statement comes out twice a year?
Twice a year.
Twice a year. Okay.
Yeah, back in 2002, all the way to 2013, it was once a year.
Okay.
But that's another one of our enhancements. We now do it twice a year. So you don't have to wait a whole year to see what has happened.
Right.
Because we measure the growth of our plan, the benefit, the status of it by our investments overall and our operations overall.
Right.
As of June 30th and of December 31st. So we might have done great in May, But if the market tanks in June,
Yeah.
June 30 determines where we stand.
Right.
Now, granted, it determines where everybody else stands too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure over the years that you have served, that you have seen the impact of the market tanking as it has impacted. So I want to shift gears. Two things I want to do. I want to talk about health insurance, and then I want you to just take a few moments to talk about some of the misnomers of your department, what people think they know or what they think they heard, and to provide some clarity to that. So the question, why does the church not offer a denominational universal health insurance plan for the pastors?
Well, it's a very interesting question. Group insurance for life, for health insurance is a very difficult market. It's extremely difficult now, but it has always been a difficult market. Back during Dr. Thomas's tenure, a survey was done to try to establish a plan. I don't know what the outcome of that survey was in terms of what the evaluative responses were, but it was not to the point where they could successfully invest in it. So they did not do that then.
Right.
Shortly after I became General Secretary, the questions arose again. So we began the process. And we started doing surveys, and we made contact with carriers and providers, and we got quotes and et cetera. And we put the information out there to see who would be willing to enroll in the plan.
Right.
And this was during the time when they had these governmental plans that they were pushing in groups in different parts of the country. But our people did not choose to enroll.
Okay.
Most of our people already had some kind of insurance.
Okay.
And that was early in my administration. About 8-10 years later, we tried it a second time, same results. Now, let me tell you what I think is happening. When our ministers are young, they are married.
Okay.
Their spouses have good jobs, and they are able to be insured by their spouses. Or some of our ministers are bivocational.
Okay.
They're insured by their other job. So as they progress in the ministry, 20 years later, in their 40s and 50s, now they're at a full station, spouse has retired, and they're doing their ministerial work full time. Now they want a policy.
Okay.
And we get a call. Do we have a plan? No. Because what was the challenge in our earlier efforts was that we could get older ministers to agree to be a part of the plan, but we couldn't get the younger ministers to be a part of the plan. Yet the younger ministers were the ones you needed in order to get a competitive rate.
Okay. Because
so if the rate is too high,
right,
even the older ministers would not want to buy into it. So that's the reason why we've not been able to bring about a plan. And this is my assessment of why we've not been able to make any progress with it.
So is it time again to revisit that? How many years has it been since that survey was? Now I know you're retiring. Okay, so we know you.
But let me share one more thing. One more thing. There's a group called the Church Health Project, And in my early years here, I would attend their national conferences, mainly so that I could learn from them what they were doing and could we benefit from it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got with several of them and I just told them, I said, we're trying to get a plan together. And their response to me was, if you don't have one, don't start one. And the reason they were saying that was, yes, because they were saying that was because when you start a plan, it's expensive to maintain it. First of all, it's got to be national. And all the companies aren't national, so you're limiting yourself. But the other part is to have a qualified plan, 50% of the premium has to be paid by the employer.
Wow.
Now, how does the church pay that? And if the church doesn't pay it, then the pastor has to pay it. But at least to qualify, at least 50% would have to be, the 50% of the premium would have to be coming to the company from the church or the organization. They want more. They really prefer 80% or 90%, but at least 50%. Otherwise, it's a different type plan, and that's the type plan where it's very hard to get carriers to underwrite. So these are the issues that are out there. Yeah. We've never talked about it. Unfortunately, I don't have a microphone. Right. That's why I'm so happy to be here today. I don't have a microphone to be able to tell the story, the history. All I can do is tell people when they call and ask, do we have a insurance plan, a hospitalization plan? All I can tell them is no, we've tried, but we've not had any success. They don't really want to hear the excuses why.
Right.
They just want an answer.
Well, I think we need to revisit it. I mean, it just seems to me that that would be something. And I know the dynamics and I know the complexity and I know it's a cost factor. But that would be something that the church, you know, would offer, would have in place to its pastors. General Secretary Leon T. Moore says, could it be that the pastor's salary, and I'm assuming he's talking about the younger pastors, did not support a health care plan? I know you said you had difficulty trying to get young pastors to buy into it.
I can't answer that question because I don't really know. The issue was not the pastor's salary. The issue was getting the money for the churches to participate. The pastor has to enroll. The problem we had with the pastor's enrollment was them giving up what they had, which is what they believed they had to do to move into something that was not certain.
Right. Lord, there's so much I want to say, but I think we'll just go ahead and we'll move on because I'm going to do a show with a group of bivocational pastors, which is most of us, you know, who are working second jobs. But I've had many reach out to me and say, we need to do something and look at being a full-time pastor, because most pastors don't see themselves as part-time. You know, they see themselves as full-time. So Dr. Davis, we have a question before we talk about the safe harbor option. Did you mention that already?
I haven't had a chance to mention that. Yes.
Would you please?
Yes. Safe harbor actually was day one of my administration as general secretary. During the 2-year training period that I worked under Dr. Thomas, and I had a chance to evaluate the retirement plan. At that time, we didn't have safe harbor. So if you, when you got ready to retire, or even more so, faced mandatory retirement, and needed to get your funds out, if the market had declined significantly, like what happened in 2002 and what happened in 2008, what happened in 2018. If you had to come out in those years, you had taken a big hit before you got your money. And I looked at that and I said, now, I think we need to do this differently. I don't think it's fair that a participant, an enrollee, has come to the end of their tenure. They've got to take the money now, and they're losing so much of it because of what has happened within just the last year or two. So I said that they ought to be able, like anyone else would do, plan for their retirement so that as they near it, they can expect to have some of these funds more safely protected. So we put in place, and this was acted and approved at the 2002 General Conference, Safe Harbor, which at that time allowed anyone who was 69 or older to have their account moved over into a safe area, take it off the oceans, off the high seas, and move it into a safe harbor where no matter how much trouble's going on out in the high seas, you just have some small waves there in the harbor. So if the markets went up during that period of time, your investment didn't go up that much. But if the markets went way down, your investments did not go, you did not suffer nearly as much. So we set that up. And we set it up for people 69 and older, which was within 5 years of mandatory retirement. That was my suggestion to Dr. Thomas, and they went through with it. We put it in place. And it was working. But then as we did more study, we realized that there are people who have planned their lives in such a way that they don't have to go to 74 to retire. Our thoughts were for people who were going to mandatory retirement. Some people retired 65, 66, 67, and they don't need to do anything else. They would be affected by this. So we then changed that lower limit to 65. If 65 is the earliest that you can retire, that's also the earliest you can move these monies into that safe harbor. So now you got a 9-year window. You don't have to retire at 65. If everything is going backwards, you can stay a year or two longer until there is some recovery. And we've seen that happening in the markets, even when there were bad years, were followed by good years. And so that's what happened. In fact, I had decided that I was going to move into the safe harbor at the beginning of my last quadrennium. I did that, and I missed some great opportunities of growth, but I'm comfortable that what I have there is safe for when I do retire. Right. Now, the problem about safe harbor for us is that you can't move in and out. Once you move in, you stay there. Okay. Because we're buying products to protect that account from losses. And we've never had any losses in the safe harbor since it's been in place.
Wow, thank you. And thank you for that question. So what are the general misunderstandings, misnomers of your department? People have put out, I know a couple of weeks ago, I think when I had, Lord, I'm having a memory lapse, but
the OGs.
The OGs, that's right. When I had the OGs, they made some comments, and I know that you wanted to clarify. You can tell I'm becoming an OG because I couldn't remember the OGs. But take a few moments, if you would, Dr. Davis, and just share some thoughts, and provide some clarity, at least from your perspective, on some of the things that you've heard, not only with the OGs, but just throughout what people think they know in the actuality.
Well, if I can go back to that episode, that show, there was the comment about moving the pension plan to the finance department. I think one person said, move the pension plan from where it is and put it under the administration of finance. And further said, I believe we'll have a plan that will benefit in a much greater, fuller way the robust nature of our economy. And then they later said the stock market has made exceptional gains, but we haven't seen the same gains in our retirement fund. Now, the misnomers in some of that, I mean, you know, everything has a grain of truth in these statements, and everyone has a right to their opinions. But we need to put some things in context and also to give some documentation there as to whether our plan is beneficial or not. Another one of your guests on that show said that basically talked about the pension plan and personnel services and said, when we don't have someone who's able to grow the money that's put into it, the 12%, we're doing our pastors a disservice when they retire. First of all, it's difficult to see if the 12% has grown at all. Later, they said, we need someone in that department who is experienced and licensed at financial matters. So here's what I want to say. I wrote an article not too long ago after our June statements came in that that showed that the total assets of the retirement plan has grown since December of 2002, where it was at that time about $18 million. It is now, as of June 30th, it was valued, the total value of total assets of the plan was $36 million. Nearly doubled in a situation where people are saying it has not grown.
You said that was 36 million?
36 million was the total assets in our plan as of June 30th.
Wow.
Now the market has gone down a little bit. And of course, this is reflecting what's going on in Congress, and people are reacting to it. The market is reacting to it as well. But the overall plan, as of June, $36 million. Now, I don't know how you can say it has not grown when people have been coming into the plan and people have been coming out of the plan, and yet we're stable at about 1,100 participants in the plan. When I say participants, I mean active participants. And the plan has grown over this period of time by it's doubled in size. Now look at this, if you will. In a 19-year period, we've only had 4 negative years in 19.
Okay.
But the same negative years we had, the stock market had.
Mm-hmm.
Now, our plan is not like an individual's 401k or 403b, because our plan is a company plan. So how we determine our return is based on 3 factors. How much money do we take in, which is our contributions? And then how much money is generated by the funds we have invested in the market? Mm-hmm. Those two get added together. And then we subtract the operating costs. And that determines what our return on investment is. Okay. That's in a nutshell. It's a little bit more involved because we have to adjust here and there for active participants, there's pre-enrollees, and safe harbor. They each have separate pots that we have to maintain at certain areas. But we have been beating the market every year. Now, the problem, what people are talking about, is that the market they're talking about is the equity market, the Dow, the S&P. That's what they're looking at. Well, those are all equities. We don't have all of our investments in just equities. We've got a fixed portion as well. Our allocation is roughly 60-40. And that allows us to have some safety. So when there's a downturn, it doesn't affect us as much. But yet our 60% portion allows us to take advantage of the upturns and the growth. Now, what we do, I don't make the investments. I don't call up stockbrokers and all that other kind of stuff. We don't do that. We've got a contract administrator, and we work together with through our board. We employ 5 investment managers, and we assign to them certain portions of the total portfolio. We have an investment policy statement, and it includes our allocation. And they each get it, they have to sign for it, and they have to abide by it. Mm-hmm. But the difference is we make them compete against each other. If the way they've invested the funds is not as productive as what someone else is doing, and it continues to lag for 2 or 3 years, we get rid of them, we get another. And that way we avoid the Madoff possibility. You remember Madoff?
Yes.
Yeah. That's why we don't put all of the money with one manager, because if they mess up, everybody suffers. So with 5 managers, if someone does do something that they're not permitted to do, allowed to do, shouldn't do, but they did it anyway, it does not have that significant impact on the entire portfolio. Right. And so we've done well. But I want to say this. Since 2006, when these statements have been made about our plan doesn't do as well, I got a plan and it does better, and I don't see why we should be paying into this one, but I could pay into my own plan. I said, listen, if you have a plan, and I've said this on the conference floor, if you have a plan that is doing better, share it with us. Yeah. Give us the investment manager's contact information. Take a copy of your report, blot out your personal information, and send it to us so we can see that your plan is better. Right. Not to this day, we've not received a single plan response. Not one single response.
That's interesting.
But now, if even this year, when they say we're not doing as well, our return for active participants was 10.59%. And if they weren't messing up in Washington, we could perhaps have finished this year, even in the midst of a pandemic. We could have gotten a 20% return. Wow. Because the market, although, and this is just my personal assessment, and again, I'm not investing in these. We hire people to do this. They are the expert. Our job is just to make sure they do it right. But I still say our market is on crutches. Okay. And that there is a significant downturn coming somewhere. And that's what we're watching for, so that we can try to make appropriate changes if that should begin to happen. It looks like it may not happen before my time is up, and I hope it doesn't. I hope I answered that question. But I mean, when you get returns like 8, 9, 17, 13%, 15%, 11% in 2017, 11.5% in 2019, and even now 10%, and you say that we're not growing, I don't know how you can justify that. When you look at a total portfolio, total assets of 18 million in 2002, and now it's 36 million. You know, when you say this to other people who don't know this, you're doing a disservice to them, and you're hurting the church.
Yeah. So I got a question.
I'm ready.
Okay, so the question is, does your office and the funds that you manage work in tangent with the Office of the General Secretary of Finance and the Department of Finance and Investments? Do you all work together? Or are you all totally separate entities? You do your thing and that office does its thing.
I'm going to answer that. Let me go back because I missed one important piece when I was talking about the three factors that determine what our returns are.
Yes.
I said the contributions the churches pay, that's part of our income.
Right.
The dividends and et cetera that comes from the investments that we have out there with the companies, that's part of our income. And then I said, and subtracted from that are our expenses for operating. But one of our operating expenses is the payouts that we make to our retirees.
Right.
And our retirees just this past September, 1.4 million was paid to our retirees
this year.
So just in September, that's not counting March, and doesn't count what's going to be dispersed in December.
Wow. Okay.
See, so when you look at a company plan, you can't compare a company plan to, your personal plan that doesn't have those expenses and et cetera.
Right.
And yet, when I look at our 403B returns,
yeah,
our first 6 months we outdid the 403Bs each participant. Now, let me get to your question. Do we work with do we work with the Department of Finance in terms of our I'm hearing that in terms of our finances and our record keeping and et cetera.
No, and I think they said and your investments, as you have talked about who manages.
And our investments, yes.
Right. Do they work with you all, or are you all separate?
We're separate.
Okay.
We are separate. Whatever they manage. Whatever we manage. And we have separate audits. There's an audit of the Department of Finance that includes, there's an audit of the general church's budget that includes the audits of those departments that are funded by that budget. And then I have an audit of my department, Board of Personnel Services, and then I also have an audit of the retirement plan because it's separate. We don't mix that.
Right.
They're under separate tax IDs. And we have a conflict of interest statement as well, a written conflict of interest statement that we adopted in 2013.
Okay.
So that is intended to make certain that we don't have overlapping roles that influence one another or could be perceived as. Because, it's not just the conflict, it's the appearance.
Right.
That can be challenging.
So how do you nip then in the bud those who would come to the general conference wanting, because I believe it came up, in fact, I'm certain it came up at the last conference about the thought of moving the funds that you manage for retirement over to another. How do you nip that? And do you anticipate it coming to the floor at the general conference in Cincinnati?
I do anticipate it coming to the floor to general conference in Cincinnati. I do hope people who would be impacted by this would, I hope they saw your show with Dr. Taylor, because on that show, Dr. Taylor said it was not his position that the retirement plan would be under the finance department.
Right, I remember.
So, now, that's what he said. And let me make this clear. Dr. Taylor's a general officer in the CME Church. I'm a general officer in the CME Church, and we are colleagues in the General Officers Council. We work together on certain projects. But what people don't know is that Dr. Taylor and I go way back.
Yeah.
I used to be his pastor in the late 70s.
Really?
When late 70s, early 80s, when he was in St. Louis at Jameson Memorial, I was his pastor. So we have a relationship.
Okay.
But if there is a move again to try to take the retirement plan and put it under finance, I will have to do what I did at the last general conference. If it occurs before my successor has been invested, I'll have to go to the floor and just tell the delegates, like I told them before, what this means, because they're not telling the whole story. You can't just take over a retirement plan. Right. You've got to have you've got to have a plan. Yeah. It's got to be approved by the Internal Revenue Service. Sure. And right now, the only plan there is that exists for our church is the one with the General Board of Personnel Services. Okay. And then you can't just up and move it, and you can't redesign it. And if you shift it, you will very likely, most likely, lose our grandfathered status that has allowed us many of the benefits that we have. And we're working hard to hold on to these benefits, inclusive of the insurances. We don't know how long we can hold on to them, but we're trying our best to hold on to it, because that is what has made our plan strong and has allowed for us to be able to do for people what is often needed and not available anywhere else. And that's why our colleagues, when we were active with the Association of Black Methodist General Officers, and we talked about the plan in the AME Church and the AME Zion churches, they loved what we were doing. They shared that with us. They wished that they could do, but you can't set up a money purchase plan like that now. So, and if it occurs after my successor has been invested, I will request permission of the General Conference to speak to it.
Well, Dr. Davis, this has been so informative, and I'm receiving texts and messages from pastors who said that they have just learned so much from your sharing today. And it brings me to my next and final question to you. You are retiring. And you will be coming out, and you can answer this or not. Are you grooming your successor? And how important is it that the person that comes in to assume this position, understand the philosophy and the work that has taken place, but yet visionary enough to move it to the next level?
Well, I'm going to have to answer you differently than the way you asked the question, because words have value.
I understand. I understand.
Yeah.
But I had to ask it.
Let me say to you that I was employed by Dr. Thomas 2 years prior to his retirement.
Okay.
I was employed as his assistant, and I was to assist him and to learn as much as I could about the department's operation. If anything happened to him between the time I was employed and the General Conference where he retired, I was expected to carry the department on to the General Conference. Of course, everyone knew that I was a candidate, and that, but it was the church's decision as to whether they would elect me, and I had opposition, and so but I was successful. Right. In October of last year, we employed Reverend Reginald Barnes out of Louisville, Kentucky, a former member of the board. Yeah. He resigned from the board to accept this position. I had talked with, and several of us had talked to several different people about this role. And they've seen the work that's involved, and a lot of people were interested, but they shook their head. Right. So, but we have employed Reverend Reginald Barnes as assistant to the General Secretary. And my task is to groom him to fill in for me between now and General Conference.
Okay.
If anything happens to me, I'm trying to share everything I can with him to know. And I can tell you now, he knows far more at this moment than I did a year into the position.
Wow.
But I still have much more, as you can tell from what I've been sharing today. I still have more to teach him and train him, because you see, I'm not. We've got to be outgoing in protecting the church. If something happens to me, it should not stop.
Yes.
The work must go on. Now, he is a candidate for successor, but it's going to be the decision of the church as to whether he will be chosen.
Right.
But I'm hoping that, based on the fact that for 8 years now, I've been looking for folk, and we've been dealing with this. And he has made the best fit so far with his business background, his experience in the church, his experience as a part of our board. I believe that he would be a good choice for the church, but it will be the church's decision to make. I just want to make sure the church does have a choice.
Right. Thank you. Beautifully answered. And I had no idea that you had worked 2 years under Dr. Thomas. And so that says a lot. Let me give you an...
Well, look, the late Bishop Kirkendall used to say, things don't just happen.
Right. Well, let me give you a few minutes to make any closing thoughts or statements. And just to think, we were talking about the length of the show, and I said, well, maybe an hour should suffice. And here we are at almost an hour and 45, but you have shared some really rich information. Thank you to all of the listeners. Dr. Duhart, thank you for being my other set of eyes on the various sites that we've been getting questions as well. But let me give you, now this is not your farewell speech, okay? So don't make it all soapy and emotional. I told you I'm going to get all of the retired candidates back before retired general officers back, and the retiring bishops too. But just some closing thoughts, if you would, about the department, the work that you're doing, and the future, of our church as it relates to this important department. I'm gonna give you that.
Well, again, let me thank you for this opportunity. I have found this extremely enriching, and I hope beneficial for all of your hearers. And I will say to you that there's a lot more detail that we could have gotten into, and should you find a weak space in your schedule where you might want to have a round 2 of this, talking about some of the other programs of our department, I'd be happy to accommodate that. But I certainly want to say that I am very proud of the work of the General Board of Personnel Services and the CME Retirement Plan. I have been made to look good to the church, but it's not by my effort alone. In fact, I take very little of the credit. I want to give credit to my board chair, and as I mentioned, his predecessors in that role. I want to give credit to Dr. Napier, Reverend Napier, Attorney Balknight, Reverend McKay, to Mr. Willie Jackson, Mr. Umorte, Attorney Trina Williams, Presiding Elder Peris Lester, Dr. Ricky Helton, Presiding Elder Dawn, and Mr. George Tutu, the members, and Presiding Elder Lisa Balboa, who is our newest member, who has replaced our Reverend Reginald Barnes on our board. They're the ones who keep our authorities in line. I've mentioned Reverend Reginald Barnes as a part of our staff, but of course, Ms. Brenda Anderson, Ms. Audrey Johnson, the ones whose voices you hear when you call the office, and they're the ones who do a lot of the work behind the scenes. Dr. Dickerson works with us with our property management, which we're hoping soon to conclude before the end of the year. Ms. Jessica Kasembe works with our retirement website, as does Dr. Duhart with our CME web page. So I'm thankful for their help and support, but I need you to know that we can't really do anything without the support of the College of Bishops and the presiding elders. They are crucial, integral parts of what we get done. We've come a long ways. We've accomplished a great deal. There are some things that are yet to be done, yet to be accomplished, and I see them on the horizon. Wish that I could have accomplished some of them some more of them before I retire, but I'm confident in the future of the church and the future of the successor to this department carrying forth this work for us. So I'm going to, I want to say thanks to my wife, of course, who puts up with me and allows me to do this work. But I'm just excited with this opportunity. And there are a lot of things that the church has afforded me the opportunity to do, roles to fill, and et cetera. And perhaps at another time we can talk about that. But again, Dr. Mason, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to not only tell the story of some of the things that we do, but to also do the Paul Harvey and tell, in some instances, the rest of the story.
The rest of us. I like that. Dr. Davis, you have been a blessing to us. Thank you for your work and for your effort. And I know we are better for it this evening. And I look forward to having you back on, because there's more to the story, if you will. Let me remind each of you as we close out. That was wonderful. Thank you so much, Dr. Davis, that this Tuesday is an election day. And you need to vote. If you have not already voted by mail-in ballot, you need to vote. Vote as if your life depends on it. And then after you vote, come home and watch CME Grow, which is on at 9 o'clock again. I've so enjoyed these. And let me also shout out to Presiding Elder LaVisha Williams, who shared on Tuesday as well. Wonderful, my dear sister and friend. And so I look forward to seeing you all on that Sunday as we go with another round of our Episcopal aspirants as they talk about the CME Church, the past, the present, and the future. God bless you all. Have a great evening. Go Atlanta Braves. We are claiming this victory. Go in love and go in peace and go with the joy of Jesus. This concludes another CME 150 conversation.